Did you find, like, growing up, did you feel there was any stereotypes or stigmas of being adopted, being an adopted person?
I probably felt, as a young kid, I think I felt like I was a sort of a little bit of a reject, and my brother was sufficiently older than me to is a high performing guy for me to be just naturally intimidated because he was extremely clever and still is, annoyingly so. But he's a great guy, and so I was probably a little bit shy. But then when I was at school, I was sort of, I know this isn't my own judgment, but I was told often that I was an extrovert at school. So maybe I kind of like adopted a false persona. I don't know. But yeah, I felt like a bit of a freak. But by the time I was a teenager, but it didn't totally bother me. But it was there a little bit. It didn't really change me in a big way, but it was there a bit. It might have been slightly undermining a bit, and I probably was quite a shy young kid. But by the time I became a teenager, I saw it very much as a virtue and as a positive thing because, I was a teenager in the 1980s. Margaret Thatcher, politics were really wild in the 1980s in England, really wild. And I realised that I didn't have to be associated with, I didn't have to believe in what my parents believed in. And that's
Because you're adopted.
diss to them. Yeah, I'm adopted. This isn't my fault.
It's kind of like a get out of jail
Yeah,
card
it's a
for
get out jail free card.
Yeah.
And that started with politics. That became everything. Just because, let's say, my dad could be like really full on and like hardcore about certain things that I really disapproved of. It didn't mean I was destined to follow in the same way, which many people are. Because I didn't have those genes that made me angry about those specific things.
It's not in your DNA.
It's not in my DNA.
Yeah.
And that I found that very liberating. And whatever my parents had been like, I would have found things where I'd have been grateful not to share that exact thing that they had, whatever it might be.
And you had a valid reason or a rationale to say, well, it's not in my DNA, therefore.
Yeah, it's literally not.
Yeah.
It was literally not in my DNA. So
It's convenient.
It was freeing, and it made me feel like I'm free of any unwanted destiny.
Yeah.
And that I was free to sort of be whoever I am, for better or for worse. And that may sound like pretentious or may sound weird to someone who can't relate to it, but for me it was very real. I felt like I didn't have anyone else's baggage.
Yeah.
I didn't have their baggage. I could take the good bits that my parents gave me, which was a lot, but I could totally go like that to some stuff that I just thought was appalling. And
did you feel ever, knowing that, say, your mother was from Adelaide and your father's from Sydney, that she came there and gave birth to you, that perhaps you are a one of a kind in that, like, you were the end of the line in that dynamic, potentially, that you're the only one in that, born to those two people?
Yeah, I mean, I've my sort of comic reference to it was there's some film where the devil is the son of some fierce animal or something, and father's the devil. I'm not telling this story very well. I did feel rather unique. I felt like I was in a one-person bubble.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was strong because I felt like, well, in that case, I can decide how I behave
Yeah.
and who I am and what I consider to be funny and whatever. And then at other times, it was desperately lonely. I'd have times in my teens where I'd go out cycling around the small town I grew up in, wondering where my mates were because I knew I hadn't been invited. And I'd just cycle and cycle, hoping to see them in a field having a ciggy or something like that. And I had too many of those moments, and I wasn't desperately unpopular. I had a gang of friends, but I think I probably leaned on them more than I would have done otherwise because it's okay feeling you're just a one-off and there are no rules, but you also want to have connection with people. And I probably while I enjoyed aspects of it, I probably actually needed my group of friends more than the people in my group of friends needed the group of friends.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And look, I suppose in that there's, possibly many people they're a single child, so they're in that environment.
Yeah.
But, I think in the adopted context, being potentially the only one that is created in that adoption, there's a dynamic that's happened, there's a circumstance, there's a situation that's meant that there's only been one child,
Yeah.
then you are unique in that.
Yeah.
You're unique anyway. We're all unique, but
everyone is completely unique.
but there's added
literally.
layers and complexities in that uniqueness.
Well,
I think with
one
adoption.
of the things that there was a common family kind of laugh, and I'm glad that my family could all laugh about this, was we had distant relatives in Canada who would come over, and every time they're like the old lady of that Canadian family that we knew and were distantly related to would say, "Oh, you and Stuart look more similar by the year, don't you?" And it's like, yes, we do, and we'd have a little chuckle to ourselves. And she had no idea that we weren't genetically related. So little things like that were quite funny.
People often want to see what they want to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they'll find
and Stuart
those
and I are
similarities.
both midgets.
Right.
We both had black hair, so there's enough commonality there for it to be totally excusable. Someone would say that.
Yeah.
And it was weirdly quite a bonding thing.
Yeah.
Because it was something we could both laugh about.
Or perhaps because you grew up together, you grew to look similar, or
Yeah,
mannerisms, or could be.
Perhaps, yeah. I'm sure mannerisms and the way we interacted was obviously part of our upbringing, so there's a bit of that. But we are very different people. But at a casual glance, we looked similar enough. Similar heights, similar colour hair. That's enough, isn't it? For siblings, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't quite remember the start of the question beyond saying that I never felt like everybody else who had siblings. I never felt there was someone who was totally on the same page. And I'm sure my brother felt the same way, who was totally on the same page. And that could be a good thing at times when it suited me, and it could be a bad thing, And I'd say probably more bad than good, but a lot of good as well, Yes.
What would you say? What's next for you, Rog? Like, what are your kind of next steps in this? Is this still something you're navigating, being an adopted person?
Yeah, I mean, you know that very recently I've discovered 3 amazing half sisters and a half brother, all 4 of them being siblings in their own right, with the same parents and everything, and they're unbelievably wonderful people. I want to. It's sort of, this is a recent thing for me, and it's sort of blown my mind, especially how kind and nice they are, and it's made me feel quite mean thoughts along the lines of, God, so is this what it's like for everybody else? Because they've been utterly wonderful to me. But it's a new relationship. My ambition with that is to sustain the relationship from afar, not to try and cluster fuck anybody, but to sustain that relationship and to make it a good long-term one, well into old age and death and all those things, in a way that feels natural to people who live on the other side of the world to each other. I am much more motivated now to try and find my mother, or at least her story, if she's not still with us. I'm much more motivated because it seems somehow unfair that I've found siblings, but I haven't found, unfair to me, but I haven't found the person who gave me life and who went through so much to give it to me. I don't think in 1967 flying from from Adelaide to London and back, first pregnant, then without a baby, was much fun, and so no, I guess meeting the siblings and just being delighted by what wonderful people they are is hugely important, very emotional. I've done a lot of sobbing in bed looking at my mobile phone, I promise you. That is true, but it's also made me feel I must try and find my mother, who's proving more elusive. It's not through lack of trying, and friends have helped me as well. I must find my mother, because if there's a chance to say to her, thank you so much, I would like to say that chance, because I it speaks for itself. I think,
Yeah.
why I'd want to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I hope
I do
hope
feel
that
very
you
lucky.
I hope that you get that. I hope that you get some answers or some closure or some openings or
Yeah, so
whatever
do I,
that may bring.
and I do not believe in, you know, happy endings being an automatic thing when you want a happy ending. But I hope I can find some version of a happy ending. Particularly, I think that means I hope she's still alive, and I hope she can at least accept my thanks and me telling her that I've had a very enjoyable life and I owe it all to her. And if I can
Wow.
get that message to her, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes. Well, who knows? She may hear this message
Yeah.
one day and
Well, if you're out there, you're only 76, and nowadays that's young. That's late middle age.
yeah, thank you so much for talking with me today, Rog. It's just amazing to hear your experiences and your thoughts and just to unpack that a little of that adoption experience. And I think to just normalise it and normalise that family diversity and those experiences and our uniqueness. And that's what I really want to bring, create that expansion and awareness of all different lived experiences. And so very
Thank you.
grateful.
It is a slightly different space, but it's not necessarily a catastrophically different space. It's
No.
just a slightly different space.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me
Yes.
talk about it because
Thank
it's
you.
good for me. It's healthy. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Rog. Safe travels.
Cheers.